Hello everybody, welcome back to Hive Prometheus. Today I said I was going to go ahead and go through a list review and some battle reports of Crusher Stampede, having used them for about 5 or 6 games now. So I feel like I've done enough of an initial research into the detachment and how to build a list and how to make the units composition and the strategy work. I'm going to go ahead and throw us over to a sample list. I just want to jump into things without too much rabble, and I can go through the units and just kind of show you how their role is served here in Crusher Stampede, and I can go over some of the stratagems that they particularly want to use. Alright, so let's just go through here and make it quick and simple. I have no enhancements in this list. The only one that I would take for the Neurotyrant if I had 10 extra points is Ominous Presence. It would make the OC of the Neurotyrant 6 instead of 3. The other enhancements for what they are have to go on characters that are too expensive or you don't want to throw away in this attachment. So the base of this list still is going to have sort of a core of Death Leaper, Neurotyrant, and 3 Neurolictors. Even though the 4 of the 5 of these went up, Death Leaper went up to 80 and Neurolictors went up to 80 each. This is a core that I'm bringing into the majority of lists right now, other than maybe Vanguard. And the rest of the list is me spamming as many monsters that are relatively cheap that innately hit on 3s. Maleceptors hit on 3s, Haruspexes hit on 3s, Exocrines hit on 3s, the Rupture Effects hit on 3s, but it has heavy, and the Moloch hits on 3s. So in total, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 monsters that are at lowest T8 with the Neurotyrant, but she can hide, and then 9 other monsters that are T10 plus. Yes, this detachment does not have a whole lot of defensive prowess. Your defensive prowess is coming from the Maleceptors. Their Encephalic Diffusion is going to be your defensive tech. You are going to run them in. You're going to get engaged with as many things as possible that are not innately just going to kill it back in the swing. You're going to hurt things so that they get -1 to hit. And if you do end up start killing things below half strength, then they also get that additional -1 to wound. Now the mirror match for Crusher Stampede versus Crusher Stampede would just be who has the most Maleceptors, because we both cancel each other out. Rupture Effects is at 190 feel great now. This is the one sort of vehicle or anti-vehicle tech that we needed in the list anyway. The rest of this is just built to destroy medium vehicles, heavy infantry, and light infantry. A Biovore for scoring, obviously. The 2 Rippers for secondaries. The Gargoyles for their either screening utility or deep strike and shoot and move. And the Pyrovore to strip cover on one additional unit other than being able to use Swarm-Guided Missiles, which is one of the better strats in this detachment. Swarm-Guided Missiles allows you to ignore any or all penalties to weapon skill, ballistic skill, hit modifiers, and it ignores cover, which means if you have a wounded monster that would normally suffer -1 to hit, they get the +1 to hit back for being wounded from the detachment, but using Storm-Guided Missiles on them, if they're in combat, they can ignore shooting out of the combat from Big Guns Never Tire -1, and they ignore the bracketing to their weapon skill -1. So a bracketed monster with 1 CP can shoot out of combat hitting on 2s. And if it's a Maleceptor shooting at something that the Exocrine has hit with symbiotic targeting, he also rerolls 1s. This is an incredible combo, honestly, for 305 points and 1 command point. It's what makes this list efficient in the shooting phase. So yeah, without further ado, let me go ahead and pull up some photos, and I'll go in chronological order of the battles that I had with Crusher. The first of which was the only unsuccessful one, but going forward I learned a lot and things got a lot better. I retuned the list, and this is sort of the standard of what I'm running right now. To sum up, so this list I had a Winged Hive Tyrant and a Norn Assimilator in the list, so I hadn't settled on a standardized list yet. I rolled up to a random table on a Friday night. It happened to be an Astra Militarum player. He had 3 bricks of 20 infantry. He had 2 Leman Russes. I think he had 1 other Sentinel squad back here, to mark targets, and he had a Bane Sword. The one that makes monsters blow up on 3+ for Deadly Demise rather than a 6. So this was a ski list that I think was just a stat check for this army. I only ended up losing the game by 2. It was 84 to 86. I did super well on the secondaries. I did all right on the primaries. I just wasn't able to kill really anything. I killed 1 tank. I killed a squad of 20 infantry that he brought back for 2 CP. I killed the 3 sentinels, but they also have the regimental keyword, so I think he brought this whole squad of 3 back as well, which was kind of a feels bad moment. I think I just needed a way to focus fire better. And the points for the Norn Emissary and the Hive Tyrant have been reinvested better now in my standard list. I think Norn Assimilator can work. I just didn't know what I was doing here. I think I would have wanted to rapid ingress him into a different target or a different threat. Also, the terrain here was my fault. I really should have pulled these big buildings to the center and put the crates back here because we wanted the majority of the fighting around the center objective. This setup is kind of BS. I don't know what I was thinking. So that's my fault. That's just a terrain setup, and this is just me just spitballing, throwing something on the board. This is not a GT layout or a Games Workshop layout. So partial user error, partially just my inexperience using the detachment, and going up against a skew list. Losing by 2, really not that bad. I don't feel like anything was really stacked against me except my own mistakes. Okay, so I'm showing the picture of my second game against Thousand Suns. I'm at least trying to show the army rosters in models. This is the first time I ran my standardized list now that I kind of knew what I was doing, and I reappropriated those points from the Flying Hive Tyrant and the Norn into a Pyrovore, a Neurotyrant, the 2 Molochs. But the Thousand Suns player had Magnus. He had a brick of 10 Terminators with a supporting sorcerer. He had a brick of 10 Rubrics with another supporting sorcerer. He had a brick of 10 Flamers with a supporting sorcerer and a Rhino. He had 20 Zangors, and unless I'm forgetting it, it was essentially like 5 big units. And he decided to reserve the Terminators and start with the rest of the stuff on the board, which I was like, okay, sure, go ahead and put 1/4 of your army in Deep Strike, and then I just have to focus on 1 or 2 other units for the turn before you can potentially come in. And if I screen out really well, I might force you to come in on turn 3, which I think I ended up doing. Okay, so I didn't take a picture in the beginning of the game because everything was happening so fast. So he originally had a brick of 10 Rubric Marines with normal bolters here behind the building. He had the Rhino with the Flamers over here that sprinted over this way. I think I originally had the Tyrannifex here. Oh no, I think I did. I think I did position him here to see down this path um, in order to blow it up. He dumped out the Flamers. I think he melted some wounds off of my Neurolictor and hurt my Death Leaper. Death Leaper, the Haruspex, and a Moloch after deep striking doing mortals were able to charge in and kill everything remaining in there. I similarly deep struck the Moloch on the other side to counter his Terminators that came in on turn 2. I swamped them with the Moloch and the Maleceptor, killing 1 or 2 Termies a turn. He kept Magnus in his backboard, protecting his Zangors. I reserved one of the Haruspexes, came in back here, just outside of 9, and was able to make a cheeky charge and kill the remaining 13 Zangors here in 1 melee after using a CP for, I think it's Rapacious Hunger to get them to reroll all melee hits because he wasn't wounded yet. He then drew Tempting Target, and I put it in the middle, knowing that he would need to move there with the Magnus to get the 5 points because that was the only thing on the board that had the movement to do so, and pull him away from my Haruspex. So it was either kill my Haruspex and secure his backline and maybe get 5 primary next turn, or get 5 points immediately for the secondary. So at that point, I had him trapped on this board. I think he had too little on the board. By the time the Terminators came in, I had stuff that could either tar pit them or for less points deal with essentially all of them. He was able to kill these 2 monsters eventually with Magnus and consolidate onto this objective and kill my Neurolictor, but it still left, I think, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of my monsters alive. The rest died. All my Neurolictors, the Gargoyles, the Pyrovore, and then the 2 monsters over here, but everything else was essentially unscathed. Pretty surprising for me against Thousand Suns, normally one of our harder matchups, but he didn't have Blue Scribes, he didn't have a Mutalith Vortex Beast, he didn't bring Forge Fiends, anything like that. I ended up winning 100 to 62. And this, I believe, was the last turn where he had to move back to his home objective. He did kill that Haruspex, and like I said, over here, those monsters died. He consolidated in. I can't remember. Maybe I sacrificed my my Tyrannifex to go in and for the last turn try to out-OC him because I'm OC5 with the Tyrannifex and 1. So I might have stolen this primary for 1 turn because he only had 2 Terminators on. And then he killed everything back, and I fell back with the Neurolictor. All right, game 3 versus Orcs. Standardized list now. This is the one that I showed you. The 2 Haruspex, 2 Maleceptor, 2 Exocrine, Tyrannifex, 3 Neurolictors. So Corner deployment. This board was a bit harder to deal with just because he had a bunch of vehicles. He had some bikes on the edge here. I think he put same thing as the Thousand Suns player. He had Gazgul with his 6 Mega Knobs put into Deep Strike or put into reserve. And I was like, all right, there we go. Get another 500 points off the board. So I just have to focus on a 1,500 point army. And I essentially have everything on the board except Gargoyles, 2 Rippers, and the Molochs, which are supposed to come in and do mortals anyway. So he got first turn, I believe. Let me go to the next picture here. Yeah, he got first turn. He moved in. I made it so that unless he essentially declared WA first turn, he would not be able to get into me. And if he did declare WA, he would kill some neural lictors. He elected not to do that. This is turn 3. I was able to put some shots into the battle wagon. I rolled double 1s. I did not shoot with an Excrin first. Lesson learned. If you're going to shoot at something and try to kill it with the Tyrant effects, and you don't have the CP to reroll and you don't have the Hive Tyrant, you need to shoot it with the Excrin. It is like, you have to do it. That is the combo now. So sure, it might feel bad to spend 325 points or whatever it is, 315 points to try to kill something worth 165 now, but it's got to happen. I think on one turn I was able to strip cover from it in order to deal some extra damage with the Pyrovore here. I was able to piece apart his infantry and like the Beast Boys. He had some Squig Knobs that I killed over here. He has whoever the unkillable white shark guy is here, Mazrog, and I had essentially screened everything out so that in order for him to threaten potentially 2 objectives, he had to bring Gazgul all the way back here. I mean, this is turn 3. He would have been better if he had just started him on the board and then hopscotch between buildings. But Gazgul is infantry. Sure, he moves 5, but on the first turn, you're going to make an advance move, and you're going to have a jump point to go somewhere else later. So he essentially lost 2 movement phases and 2 charge phases, bringing him in turn 3. I don't think I would have not been able to react to that. I probably would have just blocked him with Gargoyles for the 1 turn so that I could make it so that he loses 1 movement phase and charge phase. But this was a user error for him, and I was just kind of pressing my advantage at this point. And I think end of turn 4, he was able to get the Gazgul. No, this is end of turn 3. He moved Gazgul to the objective. Mazrog is there. Everything's kind of pushing up. And at this point, I know that I'm going to sacrifice 3 or 4 of my monsters here to kill the battle wagon and keep Mazrog at bay and avoid Gazgul. So believe it or not, this was after the charge phase. Oh no, this was after Wa. So he wasn't able to advance and charge. So he made an advance move and was unable to charge. So I think that was another thing with the Orcs player, is just user error, just having everything on the board that will benefit from WA. And I think he had some Storm Boys over here that he deep struck, and he was trying to charge in and get my Neural Lictor. I think he did make that charge. He killed it. And then I didn't have the CP to I did have the CP to heroically intervene. I think I heroically intervened. I killed 2 or 3 of them, and then in my fight phase on the next turn, I cleared it and was able to claim this objective for the remainder of the game. And then I positioned him far out so that Gazgul couldn't even move and charge or advance and charge after turn 5 to get me. So I just effectively, I seeded the middle of the board, allowed him to take it, and I had all 3 objectives on the sides here. I also moved my Moloch up to his home objective. I killed the Grots, and I did the same thing. I positioned him right here behind cover, so Gazgul would have to travel for at least 2 movement phases to get me by turn 5. So I had all 4 objectives on the side of the board, and he had the middle. Pretty good game. End of the game score was 100 to 81. He still scored a lot, but I maxed out. It felt pretty good to actually go toe-to-toe with Orcs and do pretty well. And yeah, just as a finishing shot, this is what turn 5 looked like. Gazgul in the middle, all my monsters screened out to the sides, a Ripper way out in the corner, and a Ripper back here to score Investigate signals. All right, this is going to be a short one. This is World Eaters. The only weird caveat here was the guy only had 1,750 points, not 2,000. I was running another experimental list, so I took the core standard that I'd showed you in that list, and I had upgraded the Haruspexes to Dimacrins. I originally had 2 in the list. They're Legends units. This was just for fun. However, I think the core of the standard Crusher Stampede list I showed you would have just won harder So this is 1750. I just took out a Dimacron. I had one on the board over here. Knowing how fast and how cruel and how scary World Eaters are if they get first turn, I was like 23 to 27 inches back on everything except this Neurolictor. And the only reason he was up 2 inches into a danger zone was I had a pretty good feeling that this unit of 8 bound was going to be able to get into him. Now, I did not know that they could scout 9, and then after he rolled dice on first turn, they could move 11 with the +2. So a 20-inch move with the scout, and then advance and charge. So I think he moved something like all the way to here, and then he had a poor charge. He only charged like 4 or 5, so he was able to wrap, but I was outside of 4 for him to consolidate into my Exocrine. So they mulched the Neurolictor. Cool. 65 points gone, and then I was able to just destroy those. These guys moved up to here. I was able to flame them with Overwatch and then shoot them down and melee them with these units right here. Everything else back here was able to deal with the 3/8 bound. My Maleceptor made a crazy charge. I did not have the CP for battering ram or battering charge. I went with the strike. I hit twice. I wounded once. He failed to save. I rolled 6 damage. I killed the Master of Executioners. So pretty cool, pretty great. You guys might be wondering, where's Angron? He's definitely in the list. You're right, he is. He decided to reserve it. Do we see a pattern here, people? Taking 400 to 500 points of your list and throwing it off the board. These are infinitely tall ruins. You can hide Angron. He moves 14 or 16 with advance and charge. He could have moved here to here to here in 2 turns. Put your big threats on the board. I don't think there's a whole lot of situations in my experience where I would want to put more than 200, maybe 300 points of multiple units off the board. Maybe that's just my Tyranid brain. But again, user error. Yeah, he's fast. These Khorne Berserkers with Karn moved over here. I deep struck my gargoyles. I shot them. I moved 6. I screened, and he got real mad because at that point I put a spore mine in the middle of the field. He couldn't bring Angron anywhere over here, so he had to bring it over here. He charged a Ripper. I tried to heroically intervene with the Dimacron. I needed a 5. I rolled a 3, 2 CP gone. There's nothing I could do. So that was the only feels bad moment for me in this game. This game was 90 to 34, and the guy was not very happy. But I could tell by his demeanor that he was going to go hard. He was ready to just rip my face off with this army. So I wasn't going to be a laydown. I played honestly, but I don't think I didn't put the pedal to the metal as hard as I could have. You know, I was trying to play like a gentleman. I don't think he necessarily did, but it is what it is. Yeah, so game 4, 90 to 34. All right, on to game 5. Versus Sisters, Adeptus Sororitas. So, I had turn 1, I believe. I moved up, and I had a really poor turn. I did like 3 wounds to one of these transports, and I charged in my Death Leaper and started getting into some of the infantry here. This was a really risky play with Death Leaper, but I think he underestimated how tough he could be. He originally did not dedicate any of his big tank shots to him. He didn't kill him on first turn, which is wild to me. He put in some heavy bolters that were AP1, put him to his 4-up invuln, and I was bossing saves, and I think he was alive with 3, maybe even 1. All of these transports came over. They pumped everything with Melta shots, rerolls, tagging, whatever, into this Maleceptor. They nuked him. They did 6 damage, or maybe it was 8 damage with the Melta to the Exocrine, brought him down to 6, which doesn't bracket him, brings him down below half strength, and it gets the +1. So now at this point, this Exocrine was hitting at +1 and wounding at +1 without being bracketed. So in my head, I was like, that is perfect. Him taking 8 damage and living is just fine. This Haruspex also took 6 damage, so he's at 8. He gets the +1 to hit, but he doesn't get the +1 to wound. I was able to, on the next turn, to move up this Maleceptor. Into here, and then I was able to bring in my my 2 Molochs about here, and they were within 12 of all 4 of these units each. So I was able to do 8 mortal wound checks on these 4 units, doing something like 14 to 16 mortal wounds on average, and I battle shocked one of the tanks to kill it. Pretty wild. I think a lot of people say that Molochs are not good because the maximum that you're going to be able to hit is 2 or 3 units. My other alternative, if I didn't want to bring them here, was like in here, and I could have hit 1, 2, 3, 4 units, potentially with all of them. So bunching up is not very good against Molochs. I was pretty happy with their performance here. Going forward, as you can see here, one of my Molochs made that charge in and was able to kill everything in here except a Cannoness. So I killed 2 tanks, 2 groups of sisters, a Cannoness, and I left the Cannoness on 2. Crazy turn, tons of mortals, lots of shooting. This Exocrine did excellently. It tagged the vehicle that was the least wounded, and then the Tyranks finished it off. And then between the tongue and the mortal wounds and the flamer and the other Exocrine, it shot and killed the other tank. Tons of stuff was dying. I think this player, this player has been to a lot of RTTs and a lot of GTs. I think he said he has played something like 100 games of tournament play in the last year, 9th and 10th edition. So me being able to come out with a list like this and deal that kind of damage, he was pretty impressed. So I'll take the compliment. Going forward, I believe this is turn 4 leading into turn 5. I have now moved and advanced everything to the objectives with enough OC. The Rhino was just doing deploy teleport homers in the middle. Sorry for the blurry image, by the way. My Maliceptor in the back was able to give -1 to hit and -1 to wound to everything that was below half strength and below starting strength. I mean, it hurts sisters bad. I mean, if sisters end up becoming scary, you're going to see double or triple Maliceptors in lists just so you can counter them. But yeah, so game 5, ending score 96 to 67. And I actually got a very nice compliment from this player. He said, "You played too well to not go to more events." And he's now peer pressuring me to go to an event with him here in March. All right, last game versus Tau. So I upgraded one of the Haruspex to a Toxicrin. I took out the Pyrivore in order to afford the points, and I gave Ominous Presence to the Neurotyrant, and it's still right about 95 points. My goal here was to try to attack something that either has -1 to wound or has lone op, as the Toxicrin could go in and just be a melee threat and a distraction Carnifex. I felt pretty good with this. I was able to position my monsters well so that I was able to get to objectives if I needed to. He realistically needed to jump out and shoot things. He got first turn. He was able to put some heavy damage on my Exocrine here. He did 10 damage but left him on 4. He did not pull out the Riptide to finish him off. I really feel like he should have. He should just focus fired. But he was focusing on killing all my little stuff in the middle, which is totally fine. I mean, the Neurolictors and the Death Leaper here are expendable compared to the meat of the list here. I did Shadow in the Warp on turn 3. I only got like 3 Battle Shocks. It wasn't nearly as devastating as it was against the Sisters player. Totally fine. So going into the next turn here, I was able to move some things up. He still started pumping out some shots. With the Ghost Keel and the what is it called? The Devilfish brought in the Breachers. The Breachers killed the Neurolictor. They put some wounds on the other 2 monsters here. But I essentially was able to respond to anything he threw at me, and I was eventually able to just overload the center of the board. He brought his... you remember how we were talking about putting a crap load of points in reserve and not on the board, especially when they have high movement and high damage? Guess what he did with his Tau Crisis Brick and his Cold Star? Put them in reserve, and he deep struck them back here in my corner. He killed the Biovore, and then I was like, all right, I have to move back. That's fine. So I shot at them with the Exocrine, the 2 Exocrines on the top, the Tyrannifex. I killed 1 or 2 suits, and then I made a cheeky charge in with the Exocrine, and I was totally fine being able to shoot out at other threats at 36-inch range while still tying up the Crisis suits because they don't have a fallback and shoot stratagem for them, which I was kind of amazed at. So I was able to keep him in combat with those Tau Crisis suits and still flame into him or shoot him with a Tyrannifex, because the majority of the vehicles at that point were either engaged with other stuff or the Riptide I couldn't see. So not the most efficient use of the Tyrannifex, but it not being a blast weapon was very important, being able to shoot into combat, because Tau Crisis suits are also vehicles. But yeah, so this game was 100 to 78. So to sum up all the games, first one against Astra Militarum was 84 to 86. Second against Thousand Suns, 100 to 62. Third game against Orcs, 100 to 81. Fourth game against World Leaders, 90 to 34. Fifth game against Sisters, 96 to 67. And last of all, this game versus Tau, 100 to 78. I honestly feel like Crusher is slept on. If you have the models, you can run them, and if you pilot it well, yeah, you might have a crazy first game and it'll be a hard learning experience, but I feel like once you kind of get over the barbed wire, you're running free. You can do some fun stuff. You definitely use command points to blow monsters up when they're close. Molochs can't do it because they don't have deadly demise, but every other monster in this can. Maybe not the Neurotyrant, I'd have to look at it. If you have an unwounded monster and you want them to hit better in melee, use Rapacious Hunger on the Harospexes. The units that want Swarm Guided Missiles are the Tyranifex, the Exocrines, and the Maleceptors. And if you really want to, I think there's a stratagem called Infrasonic Roar. In melee, it gets -1 to hit. It makes them take a Battle Shock check. If they fail that Battle Shock check, they are also -1 to wound. You would only use that if you have lost the Encephalitic Diffusion aura and your Neurolictors. So it came into play very rarely, but I did use it once or twice. I used it against the squad of Orcs I used that stratagem against the squad of Knobs in my Orc game. So there you have it. There's a bunch of battle reports. There's a sample list. As you could hear throughout some of the battle reports, I did go ahead and tweak some of them to be experimental and have some fun. I threw in a Winged Hive Tyrant, a Norn Assimilator, a Toxicrin, a Dimacrin for a Legends unit if you're playing more casually and you don't want to bring this to an RTT or GT. But I found some great success using Crusher. I love monsters. This is the way I like to play. I like big monsters, big robots. So that last game was especially fun. It was our Pacific Rim game, Kaiju versus Jaegers. But go ahead, go out and experiment. A lot of the detachments are very viable, especially in casual play. I think if you cordon yourself off and you don't try things, Tyranids are an experimental army. You take risks, you learn things, you find the cool synergies, what detachment uses what unit, can I use an enhancement here, what stratagem benefits the most. Crusher is just like that. I think you have to be a little risky, a little experimental, but you also have to find those units that do sort of thread that line of efficiency and damage. So after all that, thank you for watching. I know this is a longer video, but I hope you learned something today, and I'll catch you next time on Hive Prometheus.